But I don't think it'd be, I mean, I'm sad. Oh, gotcha. Oh, it's just outside. I'm trying to find it. You get friends? Well, I do like to
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I believe we are ready to be called to order. We are live, as this is the Montessori Task Force for the Louisiana Department of Education. At this time, we do a roll call.
Okay, Adrian Colby. Present. Dr. Report Stephen Corbett. Present. Angie Day. Present. Gerald Flaherty, present. Present. Ms. Heidi Goday. Present. Dr. Angie Franklin. Present. Ms. Becky Luke. Present. Mr. Jeff Powell. Present. Ms. Catherine Saragusa. Present. Ms. Kelly Washington. Present. Ms. Molly Williams. Present. Dr. Rosalind Wright. She has a, okay, she is, okay, and then, Dr. Arthur Jupiter.
Here.
Okay, so we do have a quorum.
Thank you so much. The first order of business is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on March 28, 2024. And I believe those minutes were emailed to everyone, or they at the front. Everybody had a chance to review the minutes, right? All right, so we'll need a motion to accept those minutes.
Motion.
All right, yeah, Dr. Franklin, and seconded by Ms. Williams. All in favor?
Okay.
All right, next on the agenda is consideration of revisions to Bulletin 746, Louisiana standard for state certification of school personnel regarding Montessori certification. And for those who were with us at the last meeting a month or so ago, we had a good bit of lively conversation around what it's going to take. But obviously this is going before Bessie and then October meeting.
Yes.
So we do have a timeline here to try to get the task force to agree on the revisions. And then, of course, teacher be able to, when this is presented by the department to Bessie, be able to say that it came through the task force with strong recommendation for moving forward. With it. The main things that we focused on with the revisions to the bulletin were around the language that is currently in the bulletin specific to, you had to pull up this. Oh, it's what you have on here. Very good. What's in the bulletin currently that is specific to non-public school teacher certification. What we have recommended to the department is that we just scratch out the line that says for non-public and say that the teacher certification, the standalone teacher certification is actually all teachers will be eligible for that. They don't have to be in non-public. And so Ms. Williams, also Molly gave us, I apologize for calling Ms. Williams, but Molly has provided some other state information from other states that do something similar with that. If you want to provide any commentary along that.
Well, this will be more for item number 6.
Okay.
It would be a different pathway.
For different pathways, okay. So I think if everybody's had a chance, I know it's small, but if you've had a chance to review those recommended changes from Bulletin 746, where I read it, the proposed changes where we strike through on section 543, we scratch out non-public. On B1, we scratch out type and add the word class C that's consistent with language. I think that's in the law. And then on B1A, scratch out the teacher must have and put completed training from an approved provider listed in 1363 of this part, which is the section that identifies the approved vendors, correct? The approved providers for certification. And then B2 also changes the wording to be consistent with the law. It's class B instead of type B. In section 3, again, scratching out type and put class A. And then we struck out the words junior class A and junior Montessori certificates because that was not consistent with current practice. Is that correct? Some of this I'm doing from memory, right? Okay, so we're good over there. And then when we get down to, section, in 1363, section A credential to teach Montessori at the levels prescribed. We strike out the word age again to be consistent with practice. And then we also scratched out one of the formerly approved providers or vendors, Montessori Institute of America, as it is no longer on the list. And number 5 then becomes Southwestern Montessori Training Center, institute. And then scratching out or on numbers, the new number 6. Number 7 says any program accredited by the Montessori Accreditation Council for Teacher Education, and then the rest of the language stays as it is. So with that, again, I know we had lively discussion last time we met. Everybody wasn't here for that discussion, so entertain any questions or comments on those proposed revisions.
The only other thing I've just noticed is 1363 is for add-on, and so we would need to move or duplicate the eligibility requirement that you have listed in B at the top for the ancillary to that section as well.
Okay,
For add-on. So it would be the same language that you see above in 543B. We would just add it as a B eligibility
For
requirement
1363.
for 1363.
okay. Anybody have any objections to that?
I have a question.
Okay.
And perhaps this is the time before it's introduced that we have the opportunity to fix it. Montessori training currently awards training for primary, which is 3 to 6-year-olds, lower elementary, 1st through 3rd grade, elementary 2, which is 4th through 6th grade, secondary 1, which is middle school 7th and 8th, and secondary 2, which is 9th through 12. As it stands now, if I go to Montessori training and I am certified for 1st through 3rd grade, I get a certificate that says, it's being fixed here, it says junior certification, but someone who has secondary 2 training for high school also has a certificate that says junior. So I'm concerned if we just strike it out and just put Montessori certificate, how do we distinguish between whether your training prepares you to teach elementary 1, 1st through 3rd grade versus secondary 2, which is high school? Can we put those categories in?
Questions?
So do we need to put levels like we did on 1363 and A? You see how because that was one of the questions we had there. Because my Montessori add-on did not equate to what Montessori had versus what the State Department. That was our debate last time.
But that's a language in our system, not a language and policy issue. And so that was going to be my question for you is, when you complete the training, is there some sort of completion certificate that
Yeah.
says what your levels are?
Yes, so my
So then
concern
it's a
is,
matter of us updating our system to match whatever the certificates say.
But does
But it
every,
doesn't have to be in policy that way.
Okay.
If we say appropriate to the level. Because if the levels change later on, then we could just change it in our system without having to change policy.
right,
that
I'm
makes sense.
concerned, you know, if I am looking to hire someone and they come to me with a certificate from the Department of Education that says I'm a certified teacher, and it just says Montessori, are you really qualified to teach 7th and 8th grade? Or is your training for 3 to 6-year-olds?
Right, so we can put that supplemental record according to whatever certificate they have.
On the certificate itself, it doesn't necessarily have to be in policy.
Correct.
So our credentialing, is that the same way it works with just general, like we have elementary certified, middle school certified, or whatever? That's the same way it works.
We add.
So the policy does not specify all the different certifications.
Well, for anything other than Montessori, it does, but the way the language reads now,
In Montessori, it's never included those levels, it's just been like.
yeah, that's just been a processing like protocol that we've had internally. And so like we can always go on the back end and tweak the language to be consistent with what Mr. Will is referring to, and that's not policy. Like that's just procedure, so we could just choose that.
So they might apply for a job with you, and when you pull their certificate, you're looking for a lower elementary teacher, like that person who comes in with a certificate that says that they're higher level. I mean, you know, that's not gonna be somebody that you're, because I mean, we get people that apply for just, they're certified teachers,
Right.
but they may not have the certification in the area that we're looking for. And, and I guess they would still have the opportunity to go out for like OPAD or something like that if it need be, if we specify that in the certification piece.
We would have to address that in a different section.
Okay.
The OPAT.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So we could just email the list of the levels and then y'all can have that list to compare to certificates.
For the certificate?
Mhm.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
So I think the big question is gonna be from this committee, or if we're gonna make a motion here to accept, and, I know at least the way we do with like SAC and things, like we decide whether or not we're gonna support or approve, this is gonna go to Bessie, if we want to be able to say whether or not the task force, supports or recommends this motion, so.
So you could, what you can do is you can say you've received it, or you could also endorse. Your endorsement would carry more weight than if it was just something that you received.
Well, I'll make a motion that we endorse this policy.
I
Change.
got a motion by Slow,
Second.
and multiple seconds, Kay, Kelly.
So if Bessie, when this is presented to them and they approve this, it's gonna say from public now, or is that, it's just
gonna say for either.
That's right, yeah.
See what you did last meeting?
Yeah. What?
Maybe before we ever get done without her here. All right, so, we have a motion and a second, all in favor. If you are in favor of it, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, and I hope that everybody can make arrangements to come to Bessie on that day. We'll get the dates out to everybody, and, if given the opportunity to speak in support of this as well.
Yeah, it would be presented at the Educator Effectiveness Committee, which is held on the Tuesday, October 8th. And then would go for full vote on the 9th. If you would want to speak, publicly testify, you would be certainly more than welcome to do that.
And would the preference be to do that on the 8th of the committee?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's not determined until shortly before the meeting, but also in addition to speaking, you could always put in a public comment card and it just check in favor of, and you don't have to speak, but you can still be on the record as.
So which one are you want us to go to?
October 8th is, if you want to speak, for sure, at the October 8th committee, it'll be the next day at the board meeting, and it officially, they would.
Right, it becomes official
When it would become
on 14.
official policy.
So the better one to come to the 8th.
Well, it kind of becomes official.
Right, so all, right. All policy has to
Be
go
like a-
through notice of intent. The notice of intent process, Christie, is how many months? Usually 3?
3 to 4, depending on when the 20th falls after that meeting, and whether or not that policy goes.
Like when the August ones, it's the first today, we met, missed all right.
So it won't go to again, so.
All right, we'll send some of that out and email communication so that you can make plans to come to whichever one you can. We'll, or we're gonna have to have an opportunity to do some things with that. All right, item number 5 is consideration of an update report regarding Montessori student enrollment. This goes all the way back to our first meetings, and then we talked about it a little bit last time. So I guess from the department, do we have any updates on that?
Sure, I have a couple of different items for you. There are a total, in 2022, 2023, there were a total of 59 Montessori schools registered with the department. And 23, 24, 58. And I have a list that I can send to the group if needed. In 2022, 2023, the type 1 centers, there were 8 type 1, this is for early learning as well, public and done early learning that are Montessori. There were 8 type 1, there were 12 type 2, 3 type 3. For the 23-24 school year, there were still 8 type 1, went down to 11 type 2, and remain 3 type 3. They gave us some grade configurations by school type. The majority of them, as you mentioned, as probably many of you know, don't go all the way to 12. The majority are elementary or K-8. And then the last piece, get that, is the tab. They did update me with some student enrollment data. And so they listed by type 1, type 2, type 3. Do you want the total? Do you want by the type? What are you cutting prefer?
I mean, I think just for presenting information to anybody, it's the total number of students that are enrolled in any form of Montessori, whether it's the early child care or the 59 or 58 schools.
So in the early learning type 2 is about 1,300 students, 1,323. That's the type 2, 3, and 1 centers.
Okay.
They see what they did it for the public schools. Because they gave me the list of the actual public schools, so that's probably in their individual information.
So you can send those lists.
I can.
Thank you.
So that's only schools that's receiving an SBS.
No,
There's a lot of places that
the early
do
learning.
programs that don't, like, their scores go back, or their,
All right, so I want to make sure I'm understanding what we were just doing. So the 1333 was just for the early child care
The
center.
early child care.
So that's not the school. You have 59 schools
Right.
that are registered with y'all that would include, I mean, everybody's
Some of them
registered, right?
include early
Even our
learning.
private schools, or is that public school? Just public schools on.
It's just public schools.
So there are 59 public Montessori schools.
That's what
I think that's probably early learning, elementary and public, I think, just because there's
That's a large number.
23 private schools, and then some of us have a type 2, so we're double counted maybe
Okay.
here, and then
So it's including
we're
everybody.
gonna have to disaggregate.
Yeah. Yes, I think if you could send us that.
The data.
We can.
Sure.
Okay.
Some of the, I can give you some examples of some of the schools that they're listing.
Yeah,
Living School, Walter Cohen High School, Audubon Charter, Gentilly, Breckelage, Young Audiences, Rooted School, Homer Plessy Community School. Any of those.
so a lot of those are like charters and.
Yeah. Well, Audubon Gentilly, he told us isn't Montessori, it's Montessori inspired, and, there's,
But again, one of the reasons we wanted those numbers though is as we are presenting stuff to Bessie and or advocating through legislative work, we need to be able to show that, hey, that there is a large number of students or there are a large number of students being impacted by the impact of these policies and these laws that we so, I think if you'll send that to us, then we can kind of ascertain what that impact is, and for sure before we do any talking before legislature or Bessie, we can have that. So, really no action there in terms of consideration of that. Any comments on that? Any further information? I mean, once we see it, once you send that to us, we can kind of dig into it as much as possible.
well, we started a map, I think I said it to somebody, trying to put the childcare centers in schools, public and private. So we'll get the list and do some more research. Lots more. I'm gonna start calling them too.
And I mean, that's a reminder, as we continue the work of this task force or whatever it's gonna look like moving forward, one of the hopes, one of the goals is that we get to a place where if a center or a school, whatever it is, has the word Montessori on it, like parents can trust that it is what the world views as a Montessori school / program.
So that's the accreditation process that the LMA already has in
Yeah.
place, and if you go to the MPPI website and drop down for each state, it talks about teacher certification pathway, workforce career ladder for early childhood, and it talks about any validation project those states might have, which is their term for accreditation, but setting some sort of standard and agreeing to participate in a
Yeah.
process to.
So, having who's already identified as that, is gonna help us for starting those conversations, having that process already identified and then kind of moving in the future towards the department saying, if you're gonna have Montessori on your side, then this is the expectation, whether the department wants to move towards actually accrediting the program or just approving, whatever process we want that to look like. Yeah, well, I think it's about students and parents, saying that they're gonna make the choice. I mean, most parents are making that choice. They want, if it says Montessori, that's what they think they're getting. So, I think we, as a system, as a statewide system, owe it to them to make sure that they're getting what they think.
And then if the state making a statement like that sends a message to all the people in the districts and the heads of districts and everything that this is state approved.
Right. Right.
Or there's an expectation.
Yeah, there's an expectation from our state.
And when I send the data, if there's something that you feel like is missing and we need to, I don't know what we collect,
Yeah.
but we can make the ask.
And I would assume, Christie, and maybe, shouldn't somebody do, that if, as we get deeper into this work, making sure that however the state is cataloging information for schools and programs, that we can create a very specific tag. If somebody says that they're Montessori or like I said about what is Montessori inspired, separated from, somebody who is Montessori. And so maybe we can work with whoever the data processing people are, the student information stuff, or for whoever it is, to make sure that there's a very specific delineation for anybody that says Montessori.
I would imagine that would be a part of the, school approval process. We'll have to work with that payment team.
Again, no action really there. Any more questions or comments on the update regarding Montessori student enrollment? All right, that takes us to item number 6, consideration of legislation in other states regarding potential pathways to certifications. And with that, Molly, I'll kind of let you talk about some of the information. So our conversation last time led us to, okay, what are some other states doing as far as recognizing pathways towards certification, as that has, in some cases over the years now, created a barrier to folks that are trying to do Montessori, or trying to make sure that their teachers stay certified in Montessori, or as we hire new people. Of course, we just removed one of the big barriers. The biggest exception, my best is it can be a standalone certification. So, Molly, you want to kind of go over what you found in a couple of the other states?
Oh, well, I actually haven't even read them today, but the Montessori MPPI, Montessori for Public Policy Initiative or whatever, has all 50 states listed, and then you have to click on every one to see if they even have a Montessori policy, but they also have a one pager that highlights the 10 or 11 states that have this already. So I reached out to them today, full disclosure, and said, which two, without me having to go through all 50, do you think are the most inclusive or the best language or the most whatever? So they recommended Maryland and Virginia. Virginia actually, I think, is only in one district right now. What they're running into is some of the states started saying MACD accredited training programs, and so they felt like that was very inclusive. But what's happened is AMI has pulled away from MACD accreditation, never fully submitted, but is now, I think, stepped away. And then AMS has gone back and said that if their program is in a university, because they have AMS teacher preparation programs in universities, that they don't have to go through MACD because the university is already accredited by CHIA or, I don't know, K for whichever letters. So then what they were running into is teachers who went through AMS training at a university didn't fall under their new certification law because it wasn't MACD. So the recommendation is to say AMI, AMS, or MACD, and that should cover everybody. That's good for the people who understand what I'm saying. That's,
It's only 3 people in the room, but that's okay. Yeah, right.
I'm gonna say, I think like, you can look on the side, and like,
5 or 6, yeah.
So part of the issue, just kind of restating the problem, I guess, is that when teachers go into the traditional schools right now, or people who want to be teachers, like the certification providers in the state of Louisiana have all been vetted through the department for folks who have a bachelor's degree to go ahead and attain their whatever teaching certification that they want. That's not the case with Montessori. We don't have a Montessori certification or training provider that has, or I don't think would be willing to submit their Montessori certification for the standalone teacher certification, as it's just a separate, it's just a whole separate modality of teaching, if you will. And so, I think with the policy revision that we've just recommended to Bessie, that's gonna take care of just attaining that standalone certification. I think the work that will still need to be done through some venue, I don't know who, I guess maybe this group, or I know Joelle, y'all through the history of your work with Montessori, there's been some process for y'all or some committee to say who is a valid provider of Montessori.
In
Would
the
it-
past, that went through Louisiana Montessori Association and the Department of Education.
Okay,
There was a joint approval. So the new legislation that was just passed has now said we trust that if it's MACD accredited, that's automatically included.
which is the national.
But there could be standalone programs. You know, that like Kay and I went through Southwestern Montessori Training Center when we became Montessori certified. That's an independent program. It's neither AMI nor AMS. And they did that work to submit everything to the Department of Education to become approved. It's also MACD accredited, so it'll be covered now. But, yeah, there is a process for that.
So when it comes to the motion, consideration of legislation, as I say, regarding procedural pathways certification, does this group see any need to dive into any specific pieces of legislation for the state of Louisiana that might create an impediment to us continuing to move forward with ensuring that the teachers that we say follow the new policy guidance are actually receiving the appropriate certification?
So Christy, can you talk about the difference between an ancillary certificate and I want to say full
Standard.
teaching certificate?
Sure.
Can you tell?
So an ancillary teaching certificate, allows for service in just that one specific area. In this case, on the policy that we have listed, it would be Montessori teacher certification. You would not be able to add anything onto that or advance to leadership or anything like that. Now, the section in 1363 is an add-on to a standard teaching certificate. Once you have a standard teaching certificate, there are pathways to leadership. You can add other areas, those types of things. Now, what I will say, also about our policy is looking at these two other policies, these two out-of-state policies, it's very similar to what we have already as a potential out-of-state route. If they participate in a provider that out of state that is nationally accredited, if they're MACD accredited, that's nationally accredited. So if they did a teacher preparation program and had that bachelor's degree, if that program included student teaching, internship, residency, something like that, they would be able to get an out-of-state teaching certificate with us. Now, the caveat to that is us figuring out the exams. The content area would probably be very similar. It's just the pedagogy would be the tricky part. We can look into ETS and see about possibly finding out if there is a pedagogy style exam for Montessori specifically. That would keep us in line with all of our legislation that we already have, and it would be just a matter of adopting the exam. Because these pieces of legislation are not that different from what we already have.
But the out of state, if they're not eligible to teach in the state, what's the language about it?
The language, if they are eligible to teach in the state in which they're prepared, yes.
Right, so we ran into difficulty when we were trying to submit, and of course, these were older certificates and some of we had trouble getting some documents, but if you go to, let's just say Texas, I don't know the reciprocity, but let's just say you get your Montessori training in Texas, you have a bachelor's degree, it is MACD accredited, but Texas says we don't recognize it. It won't be recognized in Louisiana. Is that right? So there's still a reason, I think, to have, if we're gonna have Montessori, the standalone And I would argue, and y'all can tell me otherwise, but I think if you go through a MACD accredited teacher preparation program, you can pass the praxis in your content.
Oh, I'm sure the content's probably gonna be.
So I don't think
It
you
should
need to
be-
find a Montessori practice, I think.
Well, it would be a pedagogy. Law says you have to have content and pedagogy.
Okay,
And so our current pedagogy is standard principles of learning and teaching.
right,
I don't know enough about Montessori to know if that would be equivalent, if you'd have the skills to pass that test.
And so I
I think
think,
we would.
again, yeah, go ahead. Sure.
I would love to take it right now, I'll be able to tell you.
yeah, let's give it that.
Let's take it for fun, yeah, put it up.
So again, to separate the conversation, so with the policy recommendations that we endorsed today, teachers or new folks coming in are gonna be able to get an ancillary certification, right? That's what we're gonna do. And for us, Molly, in the traditional K-12 setting, there's a multiplicity of ancillary certifications that,
Sure.
you know, we hire people on CPIE stuff that, you know, and they understand that it's all you're gonna teach. If you wanna do something else,
Right.
then you're gonna have to go on and do further. So, maybe kind of some next steps for us, to try to get I hate to use sort of legitimate, like a legitimate, like standalone teacher certification. We can map out what those steps might look like. And, Christie, I guess figure out, does our state have a contact with EPS or whomever to see if there is a specific,
And there are other vendors as well.
so, I mean, if the state, I mean, there would have to be either some legislative or policy recommendation to accept a MACD accredited institution as an approved provider for Montessori certification for a standalone Montessori certificate. That there might still be, in my mind, there might still be a very, because like, do you say, Angie, if somebody is certified in, and I don't know all the right, they go very well, so don't judge me. Lower elementary Montessori, right? So they get that, let's say it's a standalone, you know, full-blown certification. And then, but then they want to transition to a traditional school. So are they now gonna be, or are they now gonna have to teach on an OBAT because they're only certified in Montessori?
Yeah.
Even though the Montessori certification is more about the pedagogy and not,
That's right, that's right.
well, and that's where I'm going with it.
Well, if by this, it would be an OFAT.
Right,
When they move,
Correct.
yes.
but if
But
we
if you
keep
do
the
this-
exam the same. They've already got the exam,
Because all you're doing is pedagogy.
then all you're doing is the tap.
Well, there's no.
Well, and just to be clear, they can't go from this to an OBAT. Because this
Well,
is
it
just an
depends on
answer.
what they have, if they have the ancillary versus if they have the standards.
Correct.
So
But
this,
in
they
our-
go this,
It really
this to a
depends.
tap.
That's right. That's right.
It depends on.
Unless I hit the bottom.
Because there are two different policies here.
1363,
The-
like 1363, I look, I don't know, traditional versus Montessori either way, but it's the first, the top, it's the top.
It's the top.
So what we,
They would more tab if they had the standard.
so I think what we need to be thinking about as far as next steps is where do we need to, look at legislation and or policy? I mean, I don't personally know if there's a difference in but we gotta look at our legislation and see, is there something specifically in our legislation that needs to be changed to allow for this? Or do we have enough, gray area in our legislation to say that if we rewrite policy to say there can be a standalone certification for Montessori, as long as the teacher, or applicant was from, trained at a MACD accredited institution and they passed the, content area and the Montessori pedagogy exam. And
We
I
don't
think,
know if there's a
There
Montessori.
in Virginia, you pass the praxis, it just says praxis, it doesn't, I don't know what the UCLA, they have their own test, I guess, but it says just pass the test, the exam required by the state of Virginia.
yeah,
So they say, here's the test, if you want to teach it, you're gonna pass this test, which means everybody has to rise to a certain level of
right.
knowledge, and so if your Montessori training program's not preparing you, then you should be in the classroom either.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, I think the difference here is ours is specific to say in the separate between the content and the pedagogy, so, because we specify that, yeah. Okay, so that really can be more like some next steps, right? Everybody agree? So we can,
The other part is that if they were, at some point, I'd like to see if you're in a MACD accredited training program, you could have a practitioner's license while you're finishing your training, while you're doing your.
That would have to be an approved program in Louisiana, so you'd have to get a training provider to go through our
Yeah.
program approval process.
Right.
Okay, so
That's on the- that's
so
on the list.
that's where there's gonna be a rub.
It's on
So
the
the
list.
question's ultimately gonna become, is the Louisiana Department of Education going to accept that Montessori credentialing programs are not the same as traditional credentialing programs? So, because that's where I think we ran into some things before, like Southwest Montessori, whatever, like, they're not gonna submit their stuff to the Louisiana Department of Education to be vetted to be because our current process is to vet you to be a traditional teacher, correct?
A preparation provider.
That's the Board
Correct.
of Regents,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Board of Regents.
No.
No?
No.
Is it required?
Yes,
And so a,
Let's open our.
Well,
But
we
we
tried
tried,
that.
we had
We
several
tried.
out-of-state entities, preparation providers apply to be an approved Louisiana provider.
I teach
Texas
them.
Women's recently did,
Yeah.
because they provide, visually impaired, hearing impaired, preparation. We don't have anybody in state that provides.
yeah, but I'm talking about Montessori folks, like Montessori providers
They're not gonna wanna go for a program approval.
or
They
a
haven't yet.
traditional
We'll
vetting
find
process,
somebody.
because they're not a traditional
The
program.
only thing that we require is a year-long residency and you meet certain teacher competencies. And I would imagine that you would meet those teacher competencies if you're teaching children at the same.
So when we were talking about this years ago,
It was that yellow,
We didn't have anybody willing to do it.
well, that girl went through and I forgot who it was, and she
Yeah.
highlighted in yellow what our programs
Yeah,
have that,
right.
that Louisiana requires to be an accredited teacher accreditation.
that their programs do
So
not
Kitty
have.
sent her stuff
Yeah.
and just had somebody review it, gave us feedback, and then Kitty just said, I don't have the time right now to do this. Nobody's paying me to do this. I don't need to do this because y'all are still hiring me to teach teachers. But I think it was more just a matter of explaining and extrapolating than it was that we didn't meet the criteria. You know, there'd have to be some.
Isn't Shanji just right there? Aren't you considering, like, grow your own?
Working on a grant, that's a tri-parish grant. That, in part, and I don't know all the details about it, but I do know that, yeah, well, you probably know more about it than I do.
Probably not, go ahead. I
And
appreciate you giving me the benefit of the doubt, though.
they're writing it as a, I forget what the word was, but, they're redoing the first grant, 'cause we all got the grant the first time. So they applied for it, we should know in October, and part of what's written in there somewhere is about having a training, program here. But there's a lot to that, y'all. I mean, because it's gonna have to be, I mean, we'd have to, submit it to MACT and it has to be all MACT stuff. Yeah, well, Katie's not. Not yet. But whatever, I don't know where it is, but that's like somewhere written in there, and I mean, they haven't even been approved for the grant yet, so. The people below who's writing it right now, we don't know even what's all written in it.
So what they're trying to do is create that, these are the three things that they're doing: creating a shared platform for Montessori training and resources, providing professional development opportunities for our educators, and sharing best practices and curriculum advancements that can benefit our respective districts. So it's called the Joint Montessori Training Project, but I don't know that they're gonna specifically, I don't know that the goal is to specifically move towards certifying people per se, unless you've heard something different.
No,
That's not in the description that they.
Read the first one again?
Creating a shared platform for Montessori training and resources.
so when it be that,
I think Montessori training, yeah.
I mean, it could be. There's a lot of training that leads to a certification.
yeah, I don't know, I haven't seen the grant, only what my district people have told me through it.
but there are several approved local providers, right? I mean, yeah, Ascension, Caddo,
Yeah,
Tangi, St. Tammany. Yeah, so
ABR
that-
has, yeah, ABR has, or had,
Jefferson. Yeah, there's several grow your own.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's a possibility that you could do a grow your own in a Montessori fashion.
And they, right,
As long as it meets our teacher competency and you go through the program approval process.
In the simplest way of that,
Then you could have a PL.
the added on to maybe, so Teach Candy, maybe add on a separate Montessori part where our teachers would still go through that, but they would have the extra little Montessori part. That would be like the simplest way, because Teach Candy's already approved through all the things that were highlighted in yellow when we tried last time.
For an adult. If they already have it.
Teacher certification.
No, full initial
Full
certification.
full certification.
Well, that's what EPR was doing and.
Okay. So we already have the capabilities to do it.
Yeah, we do Tangy, but not for, but we were just having a conversation all ago, like, Ms. J. has all this experience, she's Montessori trained in several age groups, but she couldn't come and work in our school and be considered a certified teacher right now, because she doesn't have the other stuff that is required to become considered a certified teacher, but somebody could walk in out of high school or college that's been working in a bank and teach tomorrow and be enrolled in Teach Tangy and be considered certified
With a standard certificate,
with the certificate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is technically considered certified.
Yes, it is. So, you know,
So does the policy recommendations that we just endorsed, does that fix that? Because now,
Yeah, I guess you could.
And
Show up.
yeah, she's gonna be a certified teacher. No, she'd have to come, if she comes to a traditional school, she'd have to be on OPAT,
No, ancillary.
because she would be not ancillary, an OPAT.
if I wanted to go work for Kay, if this passes, now I'm feel free. As long as I put them on.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's still an ancillary.
Yeah.
In the part first, but it's still an ancillary.
but say she couldn't come work.
She
with
could,
us?
She'd be on the task.
There would be,
Yeah,
there would
she
be
couldn't
no
become a
advancement
leadership.
to a leader.
Yeah, she could not be a leader, she could work, but she could leave, but she also couldn't leave the school, you are correct, she would have to stay at Montessori, she couldn't go to a traditional. But she would stay in the classroom.
Would she, and she would still have to take praxis?
No.
No.
So she would just come and work, and she
Work
would
in
be
the
on-
Montessori school.
considered a
She would be
certified
considered
teacher.
certified Montessori teacher, that's it.
For-
I'm gonna do that.
Ancillary.
You got options now, Joy. I mean, after. Okay, so next steps then for us to consider for our next meeting, and we can consider some dates for the next meeting. I think if many of us are planning to come down for the committees or for the festive board meeting, does this work for you guys as on the administrative team to do a meeting the same day as? I mean, obviously, today was a short meeting. This is not a normal.
We made it work.
We made it work.
Okay,
Well, there are no how long that.
Yeah,
that
right.
meeting is gonna. Usually, it's a couple of hours, but never. The people on the bus show up and we hear till the.
so we can consider some dates via email and get it out to everybody for a couple months maybe now. And then
To consider what though?
well, that's what I was gonna say, so the next steps that we're looking at, I think for sure, we've talked about the idea of how are we gonna make sure that a school that puts the name Montessori on their sign is truly a Montessori? You know, are we gonna ask the department and or legislation to create a specified process and then move towards over time? You know, say if you've got Montessori, then you have to meet these criteria, and you know, there's a process to get approved for that. Here's the application, please submit this and, you know, move forward. And then heretofore, if somebody submits a grant, application for competitive funds, it says they're gonna try to convert a traditional school to a Montessori, then we actually have a packet that says, if you're going to do that, this is what it takes in order to do that. And then, of course, there's the other end of this that says too, if somebody cannot prove that they're doing Montessori the way that it's supposed to be doing, then, you know, we have to respectfully ask.
You have to be really careful with that, because that could, if we give all that power over to like the Department of Education claiming something's Montessori, and a school who is true blue Montessori doesn't meet those things, because the department has laid something out that's more traditional type, that's gonna hurt a true blue Montessori, you know, so you have to be really careful with how we approach that.
So I,
She never wanted She never
I
wanted
didn't tell her.
government control,
We're
and she
gonna
fled, come on, y'all, she fled to India,
Yes.
why? Because like,
They were
we wanna, we can get the
trying-
history here, come on,
Yeah.
like,
I
that's.
told her Dr. Montessori's gonna roll over her grave if we give that power over to somebody else, because she did not want that.
Yeah, but there is some things, in fact, I sat next to Molly, last meeting, and there is something in RS 173402 that already has some Montessori, guidelines. Like what they consider a Montessori campus.
That's the National Center of Public Montessori.
No, that's what we need to say, that's like, yes, ma'am.
Is it non-40,
It's that,
non-public 741, or is it?
it's 3402,
It's
I'm in statute,
17, okay, provide, yeah,
provide statute.
17.
So, and there's some of the things I can tell you, at Cypress, we didn't follow that, cause it says 3 years. We only did a 2-year grouping.
Maybe
So,
the first step is just educating people about the statute.
yeah, because I mean,
173402.
And so the,
And that's not non-public, that's law.
That's
law. Wow, wow.
so again,
Schools have been following,
Yeah.
so this conversation is about when we meet again, like this could be the kind of one of the next big things.
So
Go ahead.
Becky could present on this law to everybody.
Okay.
That one is true.
or,
Maybe Becky can email it to us so we can.
Yeah. it's just-
it's your, I had emailed it to the last meeting when I found it.
That in curriculum, we need to go back around and discover.
Okay, so at least 2 topics so far, and maybe 3.
That was just updated this legislative session.
All right, so one topic for sure is about what it's gonna take to get approved Montessori certification providers within the state to be eligible to be certification providers, so that somebody could qualify potentially for a standing on certificate in the state. So that's one topic, right?
Well, and what we can do is have somebody from our preparation team actually present to you all what the standards for approval and the process are, so that you have a general understanding of what that entails.
And then from that, we can either reach out to the people that we traditionally use for training and or work with groups like Angie or the Grow Your Own group to see if they would, if they haven't submitted yet, to submit so that
I
we
mean,
have,
even if they're already approved, it's just a matter of adding another area.
yeah.
And
So
meeting the competencies for that area.
that's one topic we've talked about. The second topic we talked about is considerations for legislative and or policy revisions that guide the having the name Montessori for school. I don't know how we want to word that, but that would be,
A validation.
yeah, validation tool for Montessori. And I think that would help with, first thing about what you call the department, okay, the turnaround department, the school improvement department, because I know several of us, that's how we garner funds for converting schools or adding Montessori program was through the school improvement process. So if the school system is going to continue to apply for funds that way, then somebody in that department needs to be able to vet Montessori program. And then I forgot what the third,
Curriculum.
the curriculum piece. How are we supporting curriculum? Well, and it's bigger
Well,
than just the
yeah.
curriculum, it's the whole environment,
Well, yeah, we started that conversation when we were gonna have our subcommittees.
So specifically though, we want to talk about what support of curriculum and or Montessori implementation looks like in schools.
Well, we were talking about it being accepted as tier 1.
Yeah,
So,
But then we
Yeah.
said that wouldn't.
Yeah, it would never pass a tier 1.
well, but there was where if we have the literature from like a tier 1 curriculum, they, she presented that little, you can submit it through that. So I have some things I can share about that.
but also I think in line, this will be the third topic for us to consider. I do think we for all of our department, for instance, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibilities to say, hey, yeah, there's the list of tier one, English, math, science, or whatever. But then there's also the Montessori approved, so, you know, but I don't think we have to put ourselves in a box and say it has to comply with what we say everything is tier one. If we can create another bubble or another
Yeah.
world that exists out there that's, if it's gonna be an approved Montessori, then this is what the curriculum or the classroom setup or whatever.
Our
has to look
districts
like.
need that, I'm gonna say permission, but that
The way around.
validation
Yeah.
from the state.
Well, and I think, and not to dive too far off into this, and this is from our experience in converting schools to programs, that when we applied for competitive funds and received it, there was not a lot of conversation about the curriculum. It was more the conversation about the environment. And so, but that was a world different from where we are right now, where everything seems to center around that tier one curriculum conversation. So,
Well, we want our students to be ready to take LEAP, they're gonna still have to take LEAP, so we have to make sure that our Montessori is grounded in the standards. But then we know they'll be ready for LEAP.
okay, so those would be the three.
Real quick, can you
Stop.
share about your eighth grade?
When my eighth graders taking it. They do great.
So when eighth graders take the leap, and they just do Montessori.
Yeah, we don't do
They don't
any prep at all, but they have to take the lead to enter the Repeats Parish High Schools. So we administer, it, but we don't do any test prep, and there's.
So there's data sitting right there for somebody to look at and use as a.
Well, the difference is we have to take it every year though. So
If they would let you, third grade, you go, wow, they're not there yet.
They're not ready.
But I can tell you about sixth grade.
Yeah.
They blow it out the water.
Yeah.
And you can see it, fourth grade, they start gaining speed, fifth grade, and then sixth grade, they got it, and so I'm sure by eighth grade, they literally, but it's not developmental, the way the leap assesses it, like we do addition, multiplication,
Yeah.
subtraction, division, that's not the way. So it doesn't match in that way, so then they're tested and it's not the way the number bonds and that is, and it's language, it's lingo that can get them, and it does get the little ones. So, you know, units and ones and different things like that, that all catches a little kid because they can't transfer, that, so again. And then I don't know about y'all, but I just finished the teacher prep and the principal, I don't know if we went past that, but somebody's gotta have an open eye when they go in and they're using the new rubrics. Because a teacher's not gonna stand in front of a class and say, our objective of the day is this.
Yep.
And then it's constant say the objective. So I'm gonna tell you, they almost score ones on that. Unless you understand Montessori and you can say, okay, have that conversation, either pre-conference or post-conference, saying, what's the objectives of these groups? Why are they pulling this off the shelf? And if they can roll it and they understand it, they're gonna say, well, this group is ready for addition and this is where it is. It's not a one-for-one, so I don't know if we need to look at that eventually, but that needs to be something.
our district is doing that right. I have tons of stuff I'm ready to share with y'all. That grounded in the standards and all kinds of stuff.
Even related to the evaluation of teachers, okay, so that can be.
Good job, Ms. Kennedy.
Okay, so that is all of the new business and considerations that we had on our agenda. Again, no action on the last thing, just consideration of the legislation of the states, thank you for providing that. Any other topics or questions or concerns other than those that we've already mentioned? Okay, we will, look for some, a couple of dates in the future to send out to everybody. Do our best to try to, get a quorum. I do think there's at least been some conversation, and I guess Dr. J. There was no real predefined work for this Bessie work. No, with Bessie task force. So the question is, do we stay as a Bessie approved task force? Do we keep that set up, or do we want to transition this group to more of a work group that, so, yeah, whoever will be asking that up.
Yeah, we'll defer to Miss Nikki.
So this has been established as a public body.
Okay.
And it operates under open meetings law, and so it will stay that way. I can get together with Mark and Christine, we can have some conversations about where you see the future of this going, and so if this were to go into more of a focus group or a round table sort of thing, where you are discussing things and making some general recommendations that the department would then go with and go to Betsy and so forth. We could discuss ways of making this a more informal group so that it is not bound by some of the open meetings laws.
I think that's what he's asking, like,
But-
if we didn't have a defined purpose for this task force, how would we navigate that?
Well, but it's already been established as such, so you can't say that I'm a tree and tomorrow I'm a bear. So, we have to look at what vision do you have for that and how can we make that work or not?
Well, and I do
So
think,
if you wanted to get, say, some smaller groups together that include some of these stakeholders and members or whatever, or some of these and somebody else and have a conversation, well, that's perfectly within your purview to do so. As the State Department, we have to be very cognizant of transparency and applicability of open meetings laws. And so that is where we are a little bit more tied than you want to have a focus group over and things and call you, your friends to come discuss. That is not our thoughts.
well, and so many of us have been engaging in these types of conversations for
Right.
a
That's
number
hard
of
to do,
years.
yeah.
But I think what we have with this group that we didn't have before is, some supporting from the Louisiana Board of Education side. I definitely would not want to do anything that would minimize a voice that has now been elevated, to a level that at least since I've been working with Montessori, it hasn't been at this level, so.
Well, I thought that what we had planned last time had kind of got us around, because we had the work sessions first, we brought what information we all gathered, which we didn't. But that was the intention.
Well, three of us did.
You know, some people are sick. We could have come sick.
Like, but they still work. So, I mean, we can continue to navigate that. I just know there was a question initially about, okay, what is the ultimate goal of this task force? Is there some specific guiding principles around it, some guiding work? Obviously, I think it's great to have a group that can now provide some feedback on policy revision, potential legislative stuff. And then, I mean, we just talked about three pretty big issues that I think we can continue that conversation and provide guidance and directions to the department on. So, I'm 100% all in and keeping a task force. And then, nothing prevents us from still having some of the other work going on. We just need to, I think part of the reason why I'm bringing this up is, if we're gonna have the task force, we need some commitment to have the task force. We've had 3 meetings, 4 meetings, and it is a struggle to get the quorum sometimes. So we need to make sure whatever, we'll try to get the dates out, in a timely manner to where, it's on everybody's calendar, at least a month out or so. And then, and encourage our friends to be a part of it so that we can, we want it to be valuable conversation when we do. And this isn't, anybody that's sick or whatever, but if we have an opportunity here, so let's take advantage of it.
Well, and in the advisory councils, and some of the other levels, if you miss so many, you're out, right? Or if your position changes, you're out. So I just wonder if there's some people who haven't or aren't coming for various reasons. If we reach out to them, either tell them or ask them if they're still gonna participate and find somebody else who will come and contribute. And then the other part is, some of y'all driving in really far, and to honor the time that you're driving in, and to like fill this 2 hours with some educational pieces, or whether we're all recording something, or we need to have some tasks and use the time that we do have, because to drive down here for an hour, sure, it can get.
How many people do we need for quorum?
We need a majority, and so we have, I think it's like 7 or 8 that we need to have the majority. 14 members, so there's
Yeah.
14 members.
Are we allowed to add members? Go ahead and add more members? or-
Yeah, so, I mean,
The more you add, the harder it is.
It's the appointing authority to the membership.
we are, we at the department are the ones who determine who was on the task force.
Let's set up some time, soon, and we'll, in the next few weeks, and we'll look at these things, because, yeah, this one is a little bit different. Than some of our other groups, but still it falls under that authority of the department.
Cause we gave some of the seats away to people who might not, like she was saying. You know, people who were sitting around here.
We try to get across representation, but clearly some people were engaged than others, and that's okay, but let's find.
Well, and we've got some that have reached out and said that they don't think they can fulfill their obligation, so we've
somebody's
got,
attorney
we have
meeting that
taken
they
voting seats that we could get some other folks in the conversation, so that.
The other thing to consider too is if we feel like we're gonna go beyond one additional meeting. We're currently setting meetings for the 2025 year at a time with other task force and things like this. We give you all 4 for the year.
That'd be great.
And so with this one, because it did not have a defined set of meetings, we didn't really have a defined purpose. They were like, figure out Montessori issues. Okay, well, what does that involve?
So I would be in agreement if we go ahead and set dates and say,
Yeah, if we had 4 standing dates and knew a year in advance, there should be
Roll with it.
4.
Yeah.
could we do that?
We'll do that.
Today.
No, not today.
No.
I'm not agreeing.
Yeah, everybody gets down with that.
You know, like, today worked out, but like, this is the first day for some of us. You know, and, well, this is the first day our kids all came, this is her first official day.
Oh, wow.
Third day, so it just be, you know, just like the summer day was, you know. I know, I was just reading like some of the things people were just.
We got off the last week of school, it was like the last day of school.
Yeah.
It was like
You
that
know,
one day.
kind of be conscious of the dates we pick.
Yeah, I think the last one was actually in the middle of the summer, and it didn't work either, so.
Yeah.
Well, there's that one. The one before that was the last one.
Okay, the next one is Did you say
Well,
right?
when we have dates for other meetings, we consider other committee meetings, all those things. This was one that did not have any sort of definition in any way, shape, or form. And with the past 2 or 3 being rescheduled, we went off the request of our chair, the birthday. So,
No.
I mean, this is, I think, a top priority to all of us there. We've been trying to do this for years and.
I think we're all in agreement, if the department will be in agreement as well, so let's make it a standing committee, just like you have, others. Let's do 1 a quarter meetings and rock on, and I think, I'll speak for myself, if we know that it's like, certain day, or whatever.
It's the meeting too. You did the first meeting, didn't you? The chair.
As the chairperson.
The first meeting.
That's how I got voluntold when I moved here. All right, if there's no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion we adjourn.
Thank you, Love. Second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Right.
All right, thank you all.
Hey, I'm gonna take it.
I can put it for you.
And I should have that like, they got the name down.
Oh, can I don't think.
It like, no, because